If we haven't met yet, my name's Blake, and I am one of the owners of the Bee Supply and a commercial beekeeper, and formerly a sideline and a hobby beekeeper, among other things. So it's great to be with all of you guys as we start our journey for the new year. So as we get rolling here, I just have to say we are actually streaming live from the National North American Honeybee Expo conference in Kentucky. And it's an amazing conference. It's the biggest in the country for beekeepers. So there's over 3,000 beekeepers here in Louisville, Kentucky. And those are some pictures of our booth. We've got about a 1,000 square foot booth at this conference. There's 130 vendors here. I just have to say a huge thank you to our team at the Bee Supply. I mean, they have literally picked up a store and moved it to this conference center. So we have like an entire store at this conference. So they have been working for months prepping for this show, and it's pretty surreal to see it here and rolling. So it's been a lot of fun. We'll keep taking pictures and hopefully see all of you guys here next year at the National North American Honeybee Expo Conference. I will say, James and Sherry and myself are a little worn out tonight. We all are staying in the same hotel, and I was still working on a PowerPoint presentation. I'm presenting here at the conference, and I was still up, but it was like 12:30 a.m. Sherry, somewhere in there, that all the fire alarms went off in this whole entire hotel and conference center, and they didn't go off. I was laying there, or I was sitting there at the computer working, and they go off, and you like sit there for a few seconds, like, okay, is this a false alarm? Are they just gonna go back off? Hopefully. And they just didn't go back off. And so it's like, okay, I guess this is a real emergency. So grab my backpack, grab my computer, and forgot to bring a coat. Cold here, and sure enough, the entire hotel was emptying out into the outdoors, and so
Parking
we
lot, in the parking lot.
into the parking lot. Yeah, and
It
so
was
we all
cold.
kind of chilled out in the parking lot for about a half hour, and they let us all back in. So it would have been way more memorable if that hotel had burned down and I could have shown you pictures of that, but it didn't. False alarm. So we were all up very late last night, but
We survived it
nothing.
though. We
We
survived it
survived
though.
it. Great stories. I had great conversations about bees and beekeeping with everybody in the parking lot because it was just a bunch of beekeepers. And yeah, we all got to see what each other looks like in our PJs. So yeah, it was a unique experience, but still fun. So Sherry, while I've got you here, tell us about this month's magazine.
Oh, I can do that. And so if I've got a little bit of a hoarse voice, I've been talking all day, but it was great. It's so great. I'm gonna tell you what, y'all, if you ever get the opportunity to go to a show like this, if you're here tonight visiting us, then you got the bug. And to be able to put yourself in the middle of an event like the Honeybee Expo is the Bee Expo is just incredible, just incredible. We'd love to have you, and you come by our booth, we may put you to work. Anyway, this issue, 43rd issue, January 2024. Gosh, does it just even sound right? Y'all, does it even sound right? I'm having a hard time with it because I'm already working on February. But in this issue, we're really starting the beekeeping spring, right? Anybody that's been beekeeping for a while, we know that this is our launch. And do you love that picture with the pink pollen baskets? Oh my gosh, I saw this picture on social media, which is where a lot of these pictures come from. And South Australia, this is, what was it? Coriander? Is that what it was? And cumin. I can't remember. Gosh, y'all. Let's see if I wrote it down. I didn't. If I find out or see, I'm told you I'm tired. If I remember, I'll put it in the chat box for you so you to see. But anyway, beautiful photograph. We did bee biology. I'll tell you, we got asked by one of you a month or two ago to could we get a revisit? So I rewrote and it's 6 pages. So how you asked, I gave it to you. 6 pages of bee biology, and it's not in depth, but it's good stuff. And we all need that every once in a while. Right at the beginning of the magazine, countdown to queens. Blake kind of did this. We both kind of partnered on this. We got to get ready, folks. We've got spring splits going to be coming before we know it, and we've got queens available. You need to know what to order. We've got he wrote about a marking, the benefits and not pros and cons of that, clipping wings, whether or not shouldn't do that, and how also to calculate queens that need to be ordered. So go to that. Feeding pollen, just the regular stuff, combining hive that you know that you're going to be leading into. A chat with Stan Gore. We all know our Texas guy, Texas friendly beekeeper. He's that interview's in there. It's super good. And we touch a little bit on Varroa. I actually called it something kind of spooky. I called it Varroa. Oh gosh, see y'all, I'm too tired. What do I call it? Life cycle of a killer. Boy, those who like James, those that like mysteries, boom, there you go. There's a mystery, the life cycle of a killer. Okay, Blake, shift to the next slide, and I'll talk about my focus. So I focused on it's a double here. We've got shook swarms. This is an article that Ernie Welch, and actually I'll give Stan some credit because Stan kind of helped him film the video that's in this article. Super good article. How folks can take deep boxes and convert them down to mediums, and that's become really popular. And we got that a lot at the show today. I got multiple people talking about I don't get into where I don't want to do deep boxes, and it's just really too much on my back and so forth. Well, this is how some individuals do it. Shook, no relation to Blake, and I don't think you can even take any credit for it, Blake, but it's an awesome name. We'll take it. It's just a method of taking your deep boxes, shaking out the frames into another box that's mediums, and you put the deep frames away, do something else with them, and those medium frames, you leave them nothing but that, they will rebuild and start back up, and you'll end up with all medium frames. But it goes detail. I even have a print it where you can print the instructions in this article. And piggybacking that is Lynn Jones wrote keeping bees all mediums, because that's what she does. And all mediums, I can't imagine doing that, but gosh, she's mastered it. I mean, she don't think she even has a single deep in her bee yard. And her articles, it's very good, very detailed. She makes reference to the shook swarm article, but go in and read that. I think it's on page 38. I can't see, my eyes are blurry, so please forgive me on that. There's a video in there also that Stan helped him film, and easy peasy, y'all. That's what I got. We're
That's
good,
awesome.
Blake.
Awesome, Jerry. Thank you
Okay.
so much. Yeah, it was a
You're
great,
welcome.
great addition. Super appreciated. So cool, guys. So a couple quick things. So I really want to bring something to you guys' attention that we're really proud of. And so with our bees for 2024, so this upcoming season, we have extended our 14-day guarantee to a 30-day guarantee. So if you get your bees from us and anything goes wrong within 30 days, you can bring them back and we'll give you a new hive. And we do that for two reasons. One, we really want you to be successful in your beekeeping journey. And we think, hey, 30 days gives you plenty of time to get off on the right foot. And if there's any issue, especially if it's our fault, we want to make it right. And that should be readily apparent within even 14 days, but certainly within 30 days. So so that's a big change for 2024. And if you've already bought bees from us before we made that change, don't worry, it applies to all bees for 2024. So big change. I mean, we kind of started I wasn't aware of anybody in the industry that offered any sort of a guarantee. And we started doing it 5 or 6 years ago. We just started out with a 7-day guarantee. Then we went to a 14, and now we're boosting it all the way up to 30. I don't know if we'll ever go much over 30, because it's easy. You start getting past 30 and what you do with your bees starts making a really big difference in their long-term success. But 30 was kind of the upper limit of where we thought we could push it. And we just, again, really want you to be successful in beekeeping. And if there's ever an issue with your bees and it's our fault, we want to make that right. We really stand behind our product. So super exciting. That just automatically comes, that guarantee just automatically comes anytime you buy bees from us. So there you go. Okay, pretty excited about this. So this product, we have been in partnership and with the folks over at Premier. They make Premier boxes, and we've known about this for months and have been trying really hard to keep it a secret because it was just announced a couple of days ago. This new product called the Propola Hive. They folks over at Premier have been doing a lot of research with Marla Spivak. Marla is like the genius scientist of the bee world. She's got a MacArthur Fellowship. She is widely recognized as a brilliant beekeeping scientist, and she's done a lot of work on propolis and the effects of propolis in a hive. And so I love this quote. She talks about restoring the propolis envelope is like washing your hands. It provides basic sanitation and defense against foreign microbes. So when you have a hive out in a tree, out in the wild, if you ever, any of you that do bee removal see this, it's a very, the inside of a tree is a very rough interior, and the bees smooth out the entire interior with propolis. They coat the entire inside of that cavity with propolis. Our modern day boxes are smooth on the inside, and bees don't coat it with propolis. So what the Propola box does is, as you can see in that picture, they have they've cut grooves into the inside of these boxes so that because it's rough, like the inside of a tree, the bees fill all those grooves with propolis. It creates this propolis envelope on the inside of the hive. What this does is it creates incredible, propolis has incredible antimicrobial properties, and this envelope basically puts the entire hive inside this antimicrobial cavity. So it helps tremendously with things like American foul brood, European foul brood, chalk brood. Any of the brood diseases are dramatically reduced when you have this propolis envelope. And there's a lot of research that shows this. There's even some new studies that show it could help deter varroa mites. So obviously less disease results in a stronger hive, and it's shown the Propola hives have shown to be up to 2 frames of bees and brood stronger, which of course results in a healthier hive, more more honey production, etc. It's not going to be the silver bullet. It's not like you can put a Propola hive, use a Propola box and all your problems are solved. But it seems to, according to the studies, and if any of you are interested, shoot us an email and we can send you a big list of studies that were done on this. It really seems to make a difference in the health of the hive. So check out our website. We have them for sale. If you follow this QR code, then it will take you to the page, and we've got some videos on there, and I'm going to show you one of those videos in just a second that goes over more of the health benefits of propolis inside the hive. So pretty cool invention, never been done before in the industry. These boxes are, $5-6 more expensive than your standard wood box, so not a big price difference for potentially creating a healthier hive. And we're one of the few companies in the US that's carrying these for Propola. So let me show you guys a really quick video. Let's see if I can get to it here. And this is Marla Spivak showing discussing the health benefits of this envelope or this bloom of this envelope inside the hive. So here we go. Let me just show this real quick. So this is our website. All right.
Well, we're here at Premier Bee in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We're here with Marla Spivak. In my opinion, the leading expert in propolis. You've done so much in your body of work to not only help beekeepers, but help bees. It's an honor to be spending time with you today. I'm working on some new projects regarding to Premier Bee. Marla, in your experience with all these years, if you could possibly simmer it all down, would there be 3 things that you want everybody to know about propolis?
Propolis is so good for bees. It's probably good for humans, we know that, but it's really good for bees. And it really is a vital component of what I call their healthcare system. So it's a preventative and a therapeutic help for them. It's just a vital component of their hive structure. And having a good propolis envelope or layer surrounding the brood combs of propolis within the box is what I think essential for bees. It restores how they used to be in feral trees. That's how it was.
How important is it, do you think, to create those environments within modern beekeeping that more closely mimics nature with the bee tree?
I think it's very important. But that's what our research shows. That's what the data shows. But more importantly, that's what the bees do. That's what they've been doing for ages. Yeah. Nesting in a tree and bringing in propolis and lining the whole interior with this propolis envelope. So we were just curious why they would do that. So our data tell us why, and it's part of what keeps them so healthy.
After all these years of studying bees and studying propolis and the benefits and all the data, what's been one of the most unexpected data points that you've learned about the relationship of bees and propolis?
Well, I thought you were going to ask me the most unexpected thing, which would be sitting here and having research go to market, which is like a dream, especially for students, all this hard work to have them realize that what you do can make a difference. That just is heartwarming. But the most surprising data point is just how it just kept unfolding, one thing after another. I mean, the immune system stuff is, maybe difficult to understand, but that was fascinating. How it stabilizes the microbiome was, wow, that's cool. And it just kept unrolling, that they would self-medicate, that if they have chalk brood disease, they send out more resin foragers. It's just one student after another just kept rolling in with data that would blow my socks off. It's fun.
It's awesome because, sometimes there is an unintentional dichotomy between the information and the data and the practicality of it, how to get the information out into the field to actually help beekeepers and help bees. I'm really excited about this collaboration with Propolis, with your studies, and the future of Premier Bee and the Propola line, I think, are going to have so many opportunities to do good to the bees and promote healthier beekeeping.
Right. It's really about the bee. It's for the bee. It's not really about me.
Right.
Sorry, it's not about you either.
It's not. You're right.
It's really about
the bees.
Helping bees.
Absolutely. Marla, thanks for sharing your thoughts for this collaboration, and again, for all the work that you and your team have put in to Propolis to keeping healthier bees.
Thank you.
So pretty cool. I mean, and Marla, it's, for those of you that have met Marla or know Marla, I mean, she's a phenomenal researcher, and so much of her life work has gone to help so many areas of beekeeping. And propolis is one of the areas that, and the propolis envelope in the hive is something she's been talking about. I mean, I remember as a teenager, 15 years ago that she was talking about. And so it's I'm sure so rewarding, like she mentioned in the video, for her to see so much of that research actually come into the market as a product. So pretty cool. So check out the propolis envelope, the Propola box. So we have them online. We'll have them in our stores over the next couple of weeks. Right now they're just online because we literally just got the first shipment in, but we'll have them in all of our stores soon as well. Okay, last thing before we jump into real bee stuff. This is something that we're in the early stages of, but I wanted to give you guys a sneak peek of what's coming because you're on the webinar tonight. So we are partnering with Dalen Animal Health to offer American foul brood vaccinated queens. So you guys have probably heard maybe in the news over the past year that, oh, we came out, this company came out with a vaccine to where you could vaccinate your queens so they couldn't get American foul brood. So there's only us and one other distributor that's doing this, and they aren't for sale just yet, but we're going to have these up on our website in the next couple of weeks to order, and we will be shipping these to you. So you'll be able to order and we'll have them shipped to you. And then we're also going to be doing a special webinar with the inventors of this vaccine in a couple of weeks. And so we'll do an e-blast out to everybody to let you know when that webinar is going to happen, and they'll be able to answer any questions that you have and give you a more comprehensive overview of how this vaccine works. But it's pretty cool because the beekeepers I've talked to that experimented with this say that it does a lot more than just prevent American foul brood. It helps prevent chalk brood. It's helping with European foul brood. It's helping with a whole host of issues, and it's inoculating your whole hive against these things, which again, more honey, better productivity, better bees, and less pesticide usage or less treatments needed because of this vaccine. So pretty interesting stuff. Again, it's not for sale yet on our website. It will be soon, probably in the next couple of weeks. When it is, we'll send an e-blast out letting you guys know. And then we will also be scheduling that webinar for you guys to ask all your hard questions. So let's jump out into the bee yard. This video is a little different because I'm at this conference and it's been cold back home. And so I pulled together a couple recent videos from recent bee yard visits over the past couple of months where I talked about relevant things. And then you're going to see something really different at the end of this video. We are going to jump to me in a field in California with 10,000 hives behind me, where I talk about an interesting opportunity for you guys. So a little shorter today, about 7-8 minute video. And then we'll jump back here into the classroom. Oh, last side note, we're going to do a live Q&A towards the end tonight. So go ahead and start thinking of questions that you may have that you want to ask me, and then myself and Sherry and James will all jump onto the screen at the end, and we'll answer any questions live. We'll read them off and answer them live for probably the last, probably 15-20 minutes of the webinar tonight. So start thinking of those questions. Think of really hard ones. Try to stump James and Sherry. So come up with some really hard questions, hold those, and ask them near the end when we do the live Q&A. You probably won't be able to stump them, but you can give it your best shot. So, okay, let's jump out into the bee yard.
Let's talk about checking the population of a hive during a winter inspection. Now I know, when this video is being filmed, it doesn't feel much like winter. We're in November, but it's been warm, and so it's a beautiful 75-degree day. The sun is shining, we've still got green grass, but next month we'll be into December, and let's talk about how we do a late fall or a winter inspection. So my goal is always to be in and out of a hive pretty quickly this time of year. I am in a chillier November. I'm really just checking food stores, and I'm seeing what the bee population looks like and seeing if they need any feed in the form of a sugar brick or fondant, assuming the weather is too cold for them to drink syrup. Once the weather gets under about 55 degrees during the day, they really aren't going to drink much liquid syrup, and you've got to give them some form of food directly on top of the hive. But even if it's 30 degrees outside, you can still check on your hive fairly quickly and easily to assess the strength and assess how much food the hive has. One of the things I always do is just lift up on the hive and see how heavy it is. And that's a crude way of doing it, but fairly effective. I mean, this hive, I can tell you, weighs, approximately 100 pounds. I mean, I could be off one way or another by 10 pounds, but it's a pretty heavy hive. If I'm just checking population, I'll frequently just break the boxes apart, and I'll just lift up on the box. And I can tell you immediately, this top box is very heavy. It's completely full of honey. I can see the bee population. Looking at this bottom box, I can tell you that You know, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 frames of bees down below. I can look from the underside of this top box and see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 frames of bees up in the top box. And it can be as simple as that. You know, I'm done. It can be that fast, that simple. You know, you can do it in under 30 seconds and you can see, okay, yeah, this top box is super heavy. My bee population looks good. I've got at least 5 frames in the top, 5 frames in the bottom. 10 frames of bees in the fall or winter is just fine. I'm done. So you shouldn't be afraid of doing an inspection like that almost at any weather conditions. You know, even if it's cold, it's not going to hurt your bees to quickly open them up, get that quick feel for how much food they have, that quick feel for how many, you know, what the bee population looks like. 30 seconds in and out, you can do that in any weather conditions to assess the strength of your hives. One thing to keep in mind, you know, as we go into winter is it can be a discouraging time of year. I mean, because this is when we see most of our hives die. Now, we could have had really weak hives through the summer and through the fall, but once it starts getting cooler is when we actually see hives die and fade from 4 frames of bees down to nothing. You know, it's super common, and I know I've said it a lot, so I don't mean to be repetitive, but this equipment, you know, this is a dead hive that we pulled. And this equipment is where your value is. You know, you've got boxes of drawn out honeycomb, often still with honey and pollen in them. You can super start a hive next year. You know, if you dump a package in here or drop a nook in here, they're going to explode because all these resources are already there, ready to go. So, you know, a big piece of this year, if you're new to beekeeping, was getting all this drawn out equipment. And this is where so much value is. So don't get discouraged. You know, as an industry, we lose 40 to 50% of hives as an industry per year. It's not uncommon for new beekeepers to lose 80% of their beehives. Or, you know, if you only have a couple hives, it's not uncommon to lose both of them. So that's not an abnormal thing. Don't get discouraged. Replenish your equipment the next year and take what you've learned this year and apply it to the next year. So one quick thing is, you know, when you're looking at your dead out equipment, you know, a lot of times it'll have some honey in it. And this is a good example. You know, this is a frame that has a lot of honey in it, and you can see the comb, the capped honey, kind of looks a little white and almost a little powdery. That's very normal. Don't worry about that. Even if sometimes you'll see a little bit of mold, a little bit of mildew, and that's not a big deal. The bees will quickly clean that up for next year and reuse it. So when I have boxes like this of drawn out comb with some honey in it and some pollen in it, you know, you can just store them in your garage. You know, put them in a trash bag to keep them clean, and you know, you should be just fine storing them pretty much anywhere throughout the winter. You know, wax moths and small hive beetles are not going to be a problem because it's too cold. So I'm not going to worry about wax moths and small hive beetles really until we're no longer getting freezes at night, which is, you know, for Texas sometime in March. You know, across the South it's March or April. You know, you might even be getting up into May or June, you know, further northern states. So until the nights are no longer freezing, you don't have to worry about wax moths. And usually by that point, you're ready to use this equipment again. So, you know, in a trash bag in your garage, it should be safe. You can leave it outside a couple of nights where we get a really hard freeze, and that way you make sure that all of the wax moth or small hive beetle eggs are killed. That way you don't have to worry about them hatching out in your garage and making a mess. But other than that, store it and plan on reusing it for next year. And you can, you know, even if there's a little bit of wax moth damage on the frames, a little bit of small hive beetle damage, a little bit of mold or mildew, the bees can clean all that up very, very quickly and easily. So unless a frame is 50% or more destroyed, you can use it. I would recommend getting it out of your bee yard and storing it somewhere safe, because mice will move in here over the fall and winter. So get it picked up, get it stored, so the mice don't make a mess or varmints throughout the winter. But once you're stored and safe, you've got the perfect starter kit ready to go for next year. Hey friends, Blake Shook with the Bee Supply here. You may not know, but at the Bee Supply, we are real beekeepers. We do a lot more than just sell supplies. We're involved in almost every aspect of the beekeeping industry, from raising and selling bees, to commercial pollination, to our own commercial beekeeping operation, to packing and selling honey, to raising and selling bees, and of course, supplying you with bee supplies. We dabble in almost everything. We are giving you the chance to win the trip of a lifetime to experience the largest pollination event in the entire world. I'm going to travel with you to California in early March and show you how we unload bees off of semi-trucks, place them into the almond orchards. We'll see almond orchards in full bloom. We'll grade bees, and you'll get to see tens of thousands of beehives like you see right here behind me. This is a trip that most people in the world will never get to experience.
So there you go. Let me just get the video back on and pull this back up, and here we are. So if you are interested in that trip to California, here's where you can get a little more information about that. So I get asked all the time, hey, I would love to experience, the insider, see the inner workings of the beekeeping industry. And so I put this trip together where I'm going to take, there's very limited number. I can only take maybe 10 people. And so if you follow that QR code, you can go to our website and see, or you can just go search, I think, Blake Trip or something on our website, Trip with Blake. And you'll see all the details on there. But it's basically you come to California for a day with me. We will spend a long day, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m., seeing how the greatest pollination event in the world takes place. So it'll be an insider look at something that very, very few people ever get to see. So should be a lot of fun if you're interested in learning a little bit more about almonds, or just want the most unique trip you probably will ever get to go on. So, this is the kind of thing you'll get to see. The picture on the left was last year. This is now 2024, January of 2023. Those are a bunch of hives we had flooded. I talked about it on our January of 2023 webinar. Our crew, some of our crews just got to California today to start work. And that's a picture they sent me today of like, hey, we're already getting stuck out here. They're getting rain again. Seems like it only rains in California when we have to be out there working bees for almonds. So just part of the fun. Okay, so let's talk about January tips and what is going on in this odd month. So we always get this fake start, right, of spring. I always get the false alarm that, oh, spring is here. And I was going out with my daughters on a walk a couple days ago, and there were dandelions everywhere, and then we had a hard freeze and it killed them all. And so we kind of have these in the South anyway, we have these kind of spring sort of starts, and then we get a big cold spell, and up north, of course, it's nowhere even close to spring, but we tend to have this up and down, up and down, up and down. These are some blooms that I do expect to see in the northern half of the United States. Hang on. Okay. All right, there we go. Sorry, the audio switched over to my iPhone for some reason. If you are in the southern half of the United States, then these are some of the blooms that you'll kind of see start when we get a warm week and then die back. We'll have the henbit, the yellow mustard, a little bit of clover, even some dandelions, and we'll see those start blooming. Your bees might get a little bit of pollen in, and then it freezes again. Perfectly normal to see these starts and stops. This is a map that we made last year that just shows by color when you can expect to see a significant pollen flow begin. Now, you may see a trickle of pollen on a warm day even now, but like, when should you expect to see the major pollen flow begin? Like major, the elms and the willows and the dandelions, the big major flows start. And so these, according to color here, these are the dates I would expect to see that. So, if you're right along the Gulf Coast, you'll be seeing it in the next couple of weeks if you're not already seeing it. Of course, goes up later and later to our poor friends up near Canada that won't see it for another several months. So this is a helpful chart. It's usually within 1 to 2 weeks, so there is some variance in these dates, but it's relatively accurate. of when you should expect to see significant pollen flow. Now, your bees are starting to build and raise brood. The days are getting longer. You know, in a lot of areas, we'll gain a half hour of daylight in the next month. And so your bees know that, and your queen is going to start laying. So we have to get ready for this roller coaster. You know, longer days are here, brood rearing is beginning, yet there's little to no pollen flow in most areas. We are seeing across most of the United States a warmer winter so far. Now, that could always change. I think I said that like a couple years ago when we had the huge snowmageddon in Texas, where shut down the whole state and lost power and all that. So who knows what January and February have in store for us. But so far, it's been a relatively mild winter across a lot of the United States. And what that means is you got to pay close attention to how much your bees are eating. I'm doing this with my bees. I mean, my bees are kind of burning through food at a scary rate because we have so many days in the 50s and 60s that they're out foraging, they're out flying. Even my friends, you know, I've got friends in Minnesota that were saying, oh yeah, we were in like shorts on Christmas. You know, it was even warm that far up north. You aren't seeing a lot of snow up in the Midwest. So even in those regions, bees are burning through food faster than normal. So go out on a warm, sunny day, like I showed in that video, do a 30-second check to make sure your bees don't need some food. This is kind of this is the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook. So it is cooling off a bit, which not that abnormal. It is January after all. But if you're in the eastern United States, you're still seeing very warm weather or normal. Western, central, you know, we're seeing close to normal or a little bit below normal temperatures, but still these are not ridiculously low temperatures either. So I still say overall we're on the milder side for winter. The key, of course, is to watch your bees. What are your bees doing? If they're bringing in pollen every day and on a warm day you do a winter check and they've got a couple frames of brood, just keep paying attention to those winter stores. You know, keep doing that lift test because they may need some additional food. Where I get really concerned is when we have the first half of winter warm, like we're seeing now, and your bees start burning through food and they start building up brood. And then we get a brutal month where it's crazy cold. And that's when I get worried about starvation. So while the weather's warm, you know, if you've got less than 30 pounds of honey stored in your hive, but they're starting to feel a little bit light, get them some food now, just in case we get that cold snap or cold month on the tail end of winter. And that's where like sugar bricks are really helpful. You can just throw them on and forget about them. Or, you know, you can give them a gallon of sugar water if you want to. They'll just have a little bit harder time accessing it than a sugar brick or fondant that's right on top of the hive. So pay a little more attention than normal to the weather because it's warm. So winter feeding, again, just to reiterate, the goal is to maintain 30 to 40 pounds of stores in the second box with 3 to 4 frames of honey in the bottom box. You know, if I'm seeing below that, I'm going to be taking some action. And you can just guess, you know, lift up on it and guess what 30 to 40 pounds is going to feel like. If it's a warm day and it's sunny, you can open up that top box and get a better feel for it. A deep box completely full of honey is 50 to 60 pounds. A medium box completely full is 30 to 40 pounds. So that gives you a judge. And so, yeah, if they have less than that, go ahead and give them a little bit of food. If you are feeding a liquid syrup and you don't want to go the sugar brick route or fondant route, make sure you're feeding a 2-to-1 syrup rather than a 1-to-1. The 2-to-1 syrup, bees are going to store that more readily for future use. 1-to-1 syrup, they have to evaporate a lot of the water out of it to use. And 1-to-1's better when you're trying to grow bees. So this time of year, use 2-to-1. Use a division board feeder or top board feeder. Don't use entrance feeders. It's too far down. It's too cold for the bees to access it. So you really want to feed something where the syrup is inside the hive and at least it's being kept warm with the bees. And again, keep monitoring those food stores, especially as the bees start rearing brood. You know, it takes a lot of honey to rear brood. And so once that hive starts building, their consumption is going to go up. So let's say, for just a second here, I'm going to talk about what is maybe a trick if you want to maximize your hive strength. So this is not critical. I'm not telling you you've got to do this, but if you want to make a lot of splits this year, or you want to really grow your hive, then this is a good strategy for maximizing early brood production and population. Again, not critical, but if you really want to grow your hive, this is what I would do. 2 weeks before your pollen flow begins. So watch the recording, go back and look at that chart that I put up on when the major pollen flows begin. So wherever you are in that chart, 2 weeks before your pollen flow begins. So for some of you, that's right now. For others of you, that's not for another couple months. Start feeding small amounts of 1-to-1 syrup. So a fourth of a gallon per week or so. Feed high protein pollen patties. I recommend global pollen patties. Give them as much as they'll eat. So you can give them 1 pound at a time. A strong hive should eat that in about a week. Give them another pound. And then you can also open feed a pollen powder, open feeding, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So doing this 2 to 3 weeks before your main pollen flow begins gives that queen kind of a jump start. The bees are going to say, whoa, we've got carbs coming in, which is your syrup. We've got protein coming in, which is that pollen patty. Time to start rearing brood. And so you're going to kind of kickstart that brood rearing, and you're going to be a couple of weeks ahead of where you would have been. This is exactly what I'm doing right now. I mean, I've got our crews are putting on pollen patties out in California right now. We're still 3 weeks at least from a good pollen flow in California. My crews are out there starting next week. They're putting pollen patties on everything. They're giving them a shot of food just to kickstart that brood production. So another problem you may run into this year, this time of year, is your bees might be bothering your neighbors. I actually have more problems with bees and neighbors this time of year than other times of the year. Because this time of year, when you get a warm day and the bees start flying, they are looking for anything that resembles something sweet or anything powdery that might resemble pollen. So they're going after sawdust, they're going after chicken feed, they're going after pet food, they're going after molasses, anything that is slightly sweet, anything that's slightly powdery, they're all over it. So this is when I get calls from neighbors who have chickens, that are saying, oh my goodness, they're your bees are eating my chicken food. No, they're really just gathering the pollen, and they're gathering it like pollen, the dust from the chicken food. But that's not an uncommon problem. What I do when this happens is I feed open pollen. So I get dry pollen powder and I open feed it. And that works really well in December and January when there's no natural pollen available. And it can help discourage the bees from going over to your neighbors and sticking with the food that you have for them. It can also help stimulate brood rearing in January, but it's not critical. My favorite way to feed it, you can buy the big fancy blue feeder. My favorite way is just the middle picture there. Get a Pro Nook box. You probably bought a Nook before in a Pro Nook box. That yellow front, that ventilated yellow entrance, pull that off completely. Put a few pounds of pollen substitute inside this Nook box and put it a few feet off the ground where pests, raccoons and possums can't get to it. And the bees just go crazy over it. And it keeps it sealed, it keeps it dry. It's a great way to open feed that pollen powder. So again, not critical. It's a lot of fun though. It's fun to see those little ghost bees flying around with that pollen all over them. Feeding pollen patties, again, it can help boost bees in January. The other time to start thinking about pollen patties is once your bees start growing, and then you get a cold week or two when the bees can't fly and can't forage for pollen, but they've already got 2, 3, 4 frames of brood going in the hive. They're going to run out of pollen and start cannibalizing that brood if you don't give them some supplemental pollen substitute. Again, it's not like the hive's going to die if you don't do that. But, when we get a cold 10 days in March, and I've already got these big growing hives, I'm going to throw a pollen patty in there just to keep them rolling. Switching gears slightly. This is a common question this time of year, is my hive queenless or just not raising brood yet? Let's say you got a warm day, you took a quick look, zero brood anywhere in your hive, zero eggs anywhere in your hive, and it's late January or early February. At what point do we make the call of, hey, this hive is queenless, I've got a problem? There's a few things I look at when I'm trying to decide that with my bees. One is, what is the pollen flow like, and what are the food stores like in my hive? If there's a great pollen flow coming in, I expect to see brood. I mean, if there's the bees are just covered in pollen, those early flowers are starting to bloom, I really expect to see brood. Especially if I'm seeing that pollen being stored in the hive. The hive also has plenty of honey or syrup stored. If they don't have eggs and larvae, I'm assuming they're queenless. Take a look at weekly temperatures. If you're consistently in the 50s or above coming out of winter, I expect to see some brood. Did the hive have eggs and brood in the fall? If this was a question mark hive, going into the winter, it was like, that hive didn't have eggs and brood and all the other hives did. And it still doesn't going into the early spring, late winter, probably queenless. Look at population. If the population's on the downhill decline and no eggs and larvae, probably queenless. The other huge tell, I would say the two biggest are, what does the pollen flow look like? And then the other big one is, what do your other hives look like? If all your other hives have eggs and larvae and brood, and you've got that one lone hive that doesn't, probably queenless. So what do you do with it? Depends on the population. If it's a full deep box full of bees, then what I'll often do is I'll give them a couple frames of brood from a stronger hive and let them raise their own queen. You've got to pay attention. If they raise a queen in late January, early February, unless you're way down south, there might not be enough drones for that queen to mate with. So she might be a poor queen. She might not. There might be enough drones, but just pay attention to that queen quality. Or you can attempt to order a queen out of Hawaii. Sometimes Hawaii will start selling queens earlier than everywhere else. And the final option is just to combine it with another hive. If you've got a smaller hive that maybe came through winter with only 2 or 3 frames of bees, but they do have a queen, you can combine them together and basically use that queen in that weaker hive to give that bigger, stronger hive a queen. If you're going to do that, I would definitely use the newspaper method, so that the bigger, stronger hive doesn't kill the queen when they are being joined together. So put a sheet of newspaper between the 2 boxes of bees when you stack them together. Or if you're fairly experienced, catch that queen from the weaker hive, put her in a cage with candy, combine the 2 hives, and then kind of reintroduce that queen into that now merged hive. And that's the safest bet if you're trying to combine a hive. Something else you may see, and you saw this in the video that I showed, is when you have hives that die throughout the winter, it's not uncommon to have moldy frames. And it can look like any of these pictures. It can be dead bees with kind of mold on them. It can be, mold can look like all sorts of things in a hive. Those frames are still very usable. What I do is I just get the water hose, spray those frames off, spray the mold out, shake all the water out of those cells, and then let them dry. And then you can reuse them. So still perfectly usable, nothing wrong with them. It's very common to see that mold build up throughout the winter. Just wash, dry, and reuse. No big deal. Something else you're going to start noticing is dead bees as the weather starts warming up later in January or February or March, depending on where you are. The bees are going to start foraging. When you get a warm day, they're going to start bringing out all the bees that died during cold fronts. You're going to start seeing some dead bees in front of your hive. The picture on the right is pretty normal. A few dozen dead bees, very normal to see. Maybe even 100, fairly normal to see, especially if your bees haven't been able to get out and fly for a while. I get concerned when I see pictures like what you see on the left, when there's hundreds or thousands of dead bees. Something's going on. It's often starvation. When you see this, you just kind of have a whole hive dying. Now, if this was in the summer or spring, I would say we probably got poisoned. There's probably a pesticide kill. But, coming out of winter, there's really not usually pesticides being used. It's really often a factor of starvation, that a lot of bees starved, or maybe the cluster wasn't big enough to keep the hive warm, and a lot of them died in the cold, and the remaining bees are kind of pulling those dead bees out once the weather warms up a bit. So dozens, 100, fairly normal. Hundreds or thousands probably points to a fairly significant problem, unfortunately. Hopefully you don't see that. What do I expect to see for January? Kind of as a summary before we get to our live Q&A. I expect to see minimal but increasing brood, regional dependent, but most areas will start seeing some brood in January, even in more northern states, because again, the days are getting longer and that triggers the queen to begin laying. So I expect to see some brood. It might look like the picture you see here, where it's just a little bitty patch of brood, but I do expect to see some brood. I expect to see some pollen stores for the southern half of the United States. Maybe a little bit of pollen trickling in the southern half of the United States, but not much. And at least 20 pounds of stored honey in the second box. I'm really going for more like 30 to 40 in that second box. I'm going to show a quick video of Tara Chapman, who's a brilliant beekeeper, and she has some great insight on doing winter inspections. So I'm going to play that real quick, and then we'll jump to live Q&A in just a second.
About winter hive inspections. My answer might be a little different from others, but know that I tend to be one that doesn't baby her bees. I'm a much more hands-off beekeeper, even though this is my full-time employment. I support a team of 6 off of this. We're a little bit more hands-off. So unless there is a concern that we have about a hive, or most importantly, they don't have enough food to make it through winter, we don't actually do winter hive inspections. And so for us, we winterize about around Thanksgiving. It kind of depends on the weather, but usually by Thanksgiving, we've tried to winterize most of our hives. And then we're not getting back in those hives until at least January, maybe February. So we'll get in earlier if we've had a bit of a warmer winter. We'll delay it if we've had a bit of a colder winter. So if we do have hives that we are worried are a bit light, meaning they don't have enough honey to make it through, we'll come out and we will pop in the hives to mountain camp feed, which mountain camp feeding is just basically a method of feeding dry sugar on top of the hive. But I don't do a lot of digging around in hives this time of year. Our queens are, even in a warmer winter, are going to start and stop laying in spurts. So there's a good chance you're not going to see any brood. So there's not a lot to look for there. If you were to go queenless, you probably wouldn't know for sure anyway because of that. And you can't get a queen in Texas right now. Right? So there's not a lot going on. And I don't like to be breaking their propolis seals, because if we do have a colder winter, right, it's really important that they have those seals to keep the hive warm. So I just don't like to meddle. If they've got plenty of food, I tend to just leave them alone. Otherwise, I'm popping in just real quickly and adding some dry sugar on top to mountain camp feed. And then I'll break in, in January or February of the next year. It gives the bees a break. It gives the beekeeper a much needed break. And that's what works for me in my yards.
Awesome. I love that. And so I wanted to call out, Tara talked about the mountain camp feeding as she referenced it, where you just pour sugar on top of the hive. It's the same principle as a sugar brick. A sugar brick has a little more nutrients in it. It's got some protein in it. It's got a lot of vitamins and minerals in it. So sugar brick's better, but it's also more expensive. And you got to buy it and get it shipped and all that good stuff. What you can do that's very similar is you just get a piece of newspaper and you lay it down on top of your hive. Not that it covers the entire top of the top bars, but maybe it covers 2/3 of the top bars. and then you just pour as much granulated sugar on top of it as you can. You got to have a spacer, so kind of like our internal sugar brick spacer that we sell, something like that, to give it space for that mound of sugar. But you pour sugar on it, you put a spacer on, and then you just put your lid on. The bees will come up through the winter and they'll eat that sugar. It works. It's a lot of trouble for the bees because they actually have to turn that solid sugar into a liquid to be able to utilize it. So they have to get water, liquefy that sugar, and use it. So it's a lot more inefficient, but it can be. So it can be effective. It can be fast. If your hive is starving, they need, like, genuinely starving. Like, I've got this strong hive and they've got like 10 pounds of honey in them. You need to get them a liquid feed. You know, you need to put the division board feeder or a top feeder, or ideally the Ziploc bag method of feed that I talked about last month. You can go back and watch the December webinar video to see how, was it December? The November. Sorry, my phone keeps taking over the audio. In the November monthly buzz, you can go to our website and watch the November monthly buzz. I showed you guys how to feed with a Ziploc bag full of syrup directly on top of the winter cluster. So if your hive is literally starving to death, that's my favorite method because it gets liquid feed right on top of the cluster. They can use it immediately and rebound. But if your hive is just a little on the light side, sugar brick or dumping the sugar on top works pretty well. Combining in January, you know, so if you've got a hive like the queenless one I mentioned, and Tara kind of mentioned queenless hives too, you can combine hives, gauge the strength on warm days about 60 degrees. It's hard to tell if it's below 60 just how strong or weak the hive is or isn't. I recommend combining hives that are 2 frames of bees or less. If they're more than that, you know, a 3-frame hive is a really weak hive, but like, they've made it this far. So if they've made it this far, may as well give them a chance. You know, see if they can just pull through until spring. I'm not hardcore about combining this time of year. You can, you know, 2 frames of bees or less. Yeah, they're probably not going to make it. It's worth it to go ahead and combine them. But in general, I tend to leave hives and just see if they pull through. Last comment. I think this is the last slide before we jump into the live Q&A. One other thing you're going to notice is cleansing flights. Once you get warm days, you know, days in the 50s or 60s with plenty of sunshine, the bees haven't flown in a week or two. They're going to come boiling out of that hive and they've got to go to the bathroom. So they're going to be flying out, going to the bathroom all over the place. You're going to see this sudden flurry of activity, and that's perfectly normal. That's okay. They're not swarming. They're not doing orientation flights. They're just enjoying the sunshine. I've told this story before, so forgive me, but I always thought it was hilarious that when I first started keeping bees, I was a young teenager, and I had my hives right by our driveway, and every warm summer day, those bees would come out and they would, you know, go to the bathroom all over my parents' cars, and then they had white cars at the time, and my parents could never figure out. They're like, why on earth every warm winter day are there all these yellow and brown speckles all over our cars? And I never told them what it was. I'm sure they know now, but I never told them. I was like, I don't know what those speckles are. But it was the bees going to the bathroom every warm day. So if you've got a white car and you've got bees around, you'll probably notice some of those speckles on those warmer days. So, okay, so let's do, in the time we have left, let's do some live Q&A. So you can put any questions that you have, and thanks for joining us again, Sherry. Any questions that you have, you can put them in the chat box or the Q&A box, and we'll read them out loud for you guys, and we will answer them live on air. So you can go ahead and put those in. And
I've got some in dismissed. I dismissed some for you.
Oh, okay. Go for it, Sherry.
There
What do we have?
was there was one that was directly at you. Blake,
Cool.
for the non-commercial beekeeper, what type of frame would you recommend? Plastic or wood, and why? For best pest control, does wood or plastic frames have an effect?
Good question. So I am a wood frame guy, 100%. I've used plastic frames. Every now and then I buy some bees that have plastic frames. I've used them before. I am not a fan of plastic frames. The wood frames are easier to repair. If the ear breaks off or anything breaks, it's fairly easy to repair a wooden frame. The wooden frames are a little bit heavier duty. When you have a plastic frame that's completely full of honey, they get really flimsy. Plastic frames can bow in the heat. So if they're exposed to direct sunlight for long at all, they'll start to bow and warp. They get brittle over time, and so I see them shatter. A wooden frame can be 10 years old and still fine. The plastic frames can shatter a little bit once they get older. Most plastic frames have grooves. They're not solid plastic, and so they've got grooves in the end bars, grooves in the bottom and top bars, which is a great place for small hive beetles to hide. So yeah, I mean, all that to say, just made plastic frames sound terrible, but if you want them, they're fine. I mean, there's plenty of successful beekeepers that use plastic frames. It's just a preference thing. I feel like the pros for the wood frames significantly outweigh the cons. But that's my opinion. I also feel like it's the plastic frames just flex more. And so when you're trying to use your hive tool to get a plastic frame out of the box, it's a little harder to pull the plastic frame out of the box. So that's my answer. It would probably be great to get a huge fan of plastic frames on the Monthly Buzz sometimes, and we can have a little debate. Yeah, that's my long answer to a short question.
Well, I think it is a long answer to, but I can tell you, Stan Gore was walking around the expo today with a plastic frame that had been set out in the heat, and it was literally, I mean, it warped. Warped is not even a good word. It was warped. It was bad.
They get a little wonky in the heat.
They do.
They do.
Okay. Here's another one. Blake, and I love this one, so I saved it for you. You'll probably chuckle too. Blake, any possibility of having a New Year's special pricing on nukes and hives? This is following a blowout that we've had before.
Yeah, so we did a big sale on bees in the month of December. We've never done that. We just, our bees are looking really healthy. They're overwintering great. It's like, hey, I think we're going to have some really, really awesome good bees this coming year. Let's see if we can do a sale and get some volume going. And it worked great. You guys responded to it. Awesome. Yeah, we told a lot of bees. Are we going to do another one? Well, I'm really honest with you guys. You guys are like our inside circle on the Monthly Buzz. So I don't think we will do one that large. Bees are very valuable. They're very hard to raise. They're very hard to keep alive. They are expensive for a reason. And it's tough at that price to to make money if we sold them all at that price. So we probably won't do a sale like that. I don't want to say never, but we're not planning on doing another one. We are going to experiment with some other sale-esque things. Like we'll probably do some bundles, like buy a hive and get a free super, that kind of thing. So other price reduction stuff, but probably not as big as the one we already did.
And I think,
but if we do, you'll be the first to know. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. They will. Well, we'll have it everywhere, right? Magazine.
Yeah. But we aren't right now. We're not planning on doing another one to that scale.
But look for those bundle things. We might do some buy this, get something. I love that.
Yeah. We'll try to do some promos, but yeah, not to the same scale.
I liked this one. We're expecting, Robert, we're expecting our first winter storm in New York, 8 to 10 inches. Gosh. And every and very cold. Nice to hear you are talking about feeding in spring. You're just beginning, 8 to 10 inches. Do you have any? I don't even know how to recommend anything for this guy, because I mean, you can't
Yeah,
feed syrup
yeah,
in that. What do
right.
you do?
Yeah, I mean, we deal with this. I deal with this for our bees. I mean, a lot of our bees spend time in North Dakota and Minnesota and Idaho, and you know, and then we get those kinds of snows there too. So there's not much you can do. I mean, what I do is just make sure they have enough food going into winter, because once you get those kinds of snows and the bees are half buried under snow, you can't go out and feed. So that's where I was trying to be really proactive and making sure my hive has all the food they need on them. If I'm uncertain, like, ooh, that hive might be on the light side, before those winter storms hit, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to put a sugar brick on them. I'm going to dump a bunch of granulated sugar on the top bars, like we talked about. So they've got a source of food to carry them through that month where you may not be able to go into them. So that's really all you can do. I mean, the bees are great at dealing with cold weather. Yeah, just make sure they've got the food they need and they'll be just fine.
They will. And this is probably, I don't know, maybe the fourth or fifth question about a little mold growing underneath the cover. And this is the optimal time of year, right, Blake? I mean,
Right.
this is, what do we got, folks? We got thing cold outside, warm inside. You want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, the condensation, right? And this is really common. You're right, because yeah, Sherry, the bees are trying to keep that hive at 90 degrees in the center of their cluster, and it's 20 degrees outside. That's a perfect recipe for condensation. Perfectly normal. What you don't want to have happen is that all that condensation collects on the underside of that lid and then rains down on the bees throughout the winter. You know, a wet rain is terrible for your bees. So it's combating it's fairly simple. I kind of like sugar bricks because they help absorb moisture, which is kind of cool, you know, or sugar on top of the hive. It kind of acts as a natural absorbent for some of that moisture, which is pretty cool. But the other thing is just a tiny bit of ventilation. And so you don't want a lot, you know, but a tiny bit of ventilation in the top of the hive helps eliminate that moisture. So again, it can just be a toothpick, you know, that's up underneath that inner cover, just lifting it up a tiny bit. So you get a little bit of ventilation up there. That helps cut down on the condensation. Sugar bricks of sugar helps. You know, you can go as extreme as getting like a moisture board, which is essentially just you know, a shallow super with an absorbent material inside of it, you know, sawed pine shavings or, you know, some sheets of burlap, something to absorb that moisture as it rises. You can go that far out if you have a big moisture problem, but typically, you know, just a tiny bit of ventilation up top is enough to clear that up.
And we had someone, I answered her question earlier, and she's still on, I think it was a she, anyway, that had a moisture board and still was having extra condensation. So I went ahead and
Yeah.
recommended to go ahead and give it ventilation as well,
Yeah.
just up
Yep.
underneath the lid. I
Absolutely.
mean, it's just the temperature differential. We learned that
That's
in
huge.
school, didn't we? Condensation.
Yeah.
Warm
Yep.
and cold. And I liked this one, and we hear this from time to time. What is the best way to clean and sanitize frames after a bad wax moth infestation? I discarded and I'm going to change the words to proper terminology, frames, scraped and cleaned off the wax and the propolis. Do I need to wash, torch, wax, or just toss?
Okay. So there is no need to sanitize a frame if wax moths have eaten a frame or small hive beetles. Even sanitizing isn't necessary. I mean, the wax moths or small hive beetles aren't leaving anything behind that's going to harm the bees from a virus perspective or a microbe perspective, etc. So there's no reason to sanitize it. If my rule of thumb with wax moth damage is if the comb is on a frame is more than 50% destroyed, then you need to scrape it off or throw it away and restart. If it's less than 50%, good chance that the bees can clean it up next year. So I always freeze the frame just so that it kills any eggs or wax moths left over if I'm going to give it back to the bees if it's less than 50% damaged. If it's more than 50% damaged and eaten, yeah, you can scrape all that junk off, put a fresh coat of beeswax on it, and then put it back in a hive for them to redraw. My personal opinion is throw it away. I mean, it's so much work to clean up a frame, and then recoating it with beeswax is difficult. And there's a better than 50% chance that the bees are going to reject it anyway after you do all that work. Because there's a good chance you didn't get all the debris off of it. And it's easy to put too much wax on that frame to where the bees can't make out the edge of the hexagon, and then they don't draw it out properly, and you just kind of make a mess. So for $3-4, just my recommendation is throw the frame away, get a new frame.
And we I had a nice visit with Mr. Ed today. I bet a few of you know who that is, and he talks about the time spent on trying to recapture that frame to put back into use.
Yeah.
I don't know about y'all's time, but I'm with Blake. I just assume that $354. I'd rather just start over.
Yeah.
Not
And that's what, by the way, that's what I do. I mean, I'm not just trying to sell frames. I mean,
No,
I do that.
right?
I do that too. I mean, my own operation, I throw them away and start over.
No, us too. Us too. And our goal is to not let the wax moths ever take over.
Yeah.
So that probably pushes all of that back to what happened to start that process. We want to
Exactly.
make sure we've got really good, strong hives before we get to the point of them being overcome, that they can't, get those wax moths under control. So
Completely
that probably
agree.
we ought to land on that. Yeah. Let's see. So where's I'm good. Oh, this is a good one. I'm in my first year of beekeeping. So far, so good. We like that. Question: spring splits or not? I've read you either make bees or honey. What's the trade-off? Very good.
That is a good question. So, it hinges on two things. One, yes, what is your goal? If you do make splits, you're less likely to make as much honey. That being said, the second factor is how strong is your hive? If you are coming out of winter, let's say in late February, early March, and your hive is one deep box full of bees, and your second brood box is pretty much empty, and you want to make honey, just leave it be. It's going to take them a month to fill up that second box. By then, it's going to be close to time to add supers. But if they're coming out of winter, if you're in late February, early March, and they're 2 boxes full of bees, you need to split, or that hive is going to swarm. So it just depends on, what your goals are, how strong the hive is. Again, if you're bursting at the seams, you need to make a split to prevent swarming. So yeah, I would base it on those two things.
This is a good question. And you and I are actually, James and you were talking about this today. What genetics are being used for the Dalen? Am I saying that right? Dalen queens.
I think so. Dalen. Yeah. Yeah. So the vaccine queens.
Mm-hmm.
So the vaccinated queens, so the vaccine works with any queen bee. So how it works is they actually, you have to vaccinate each adult queen. And so what we do is we get queen candy. So when you get a mated queen and she comes in a queen cage, and there's that candy in the queen cage that the bees have to eat through to release her, that candy is vaccinated. It has the vaccine in it. And so as the queen is pulled out of the mating nook and shipped it through the mail and then arrives to you, as she's going through that process in that cage, she's eating that candy that has the vaccine in it. And by the time she's eaten that candy for 7 days and then released in your hive, she's fully vaccinated against all those things. So it works with any breed of queen. The ones we're selling are going to be our Italian Carnolian hybrids, which we feel like are the toughest bee. They're what our Texas 5000s are based off of. But it works with any breed of bee. But ours will be the Italian Carnolian hybrids that are the kind of the base breed of our Texas 5000s.
It's just so super interesting. I mean, to me, it's
yeah,
like
what a world. Yeah.
tipped over the top of it's like, wow, that's wow. I don't care
Yeah.
who you are. That's wow.
Yeah,
We're
it is. It's so
impressed.
cool.
We're impressed and we're not easily impressed. I mean, you see a bunch of things come across that one's cool. I'm excited about that. We
Me too.
have a double deep. Paul says we have a double deep box with a total of 12 frames of bees. This to me is like a math question. So, all right, double deep with 12 frames of bees, but
Got it.
only 2 frames of honey, no
Okay.
pollen, no brood. We're feeding Stan's sugar bricks. Is that something? Is there something else that we should do to increase honey?
So if you've got 12 frames of bees, so 12 frames covered in bees, that's a really robust hive. That's a really healthy hive. If you only have 2 frames of honey, that's pretty concerning. That's not a lot of food for that strong of a hive. I would want more like 10 frames of honey, or maybe not 10, but yeah, that's an exaggeration. Maybe more like 6 to 7 frames of honey is what I would like to see on a hive that strong. So you're doing the right thing, feeding. To keep that hive healthy, you just got to keep feeding it. So you pretty much just got to keep feed on it for the foreseeable future to keep them strong and robust. You're probably going to need to do a split. So probably as soon as you can get queens, you'll need to do a split, and you'll probably need to keep feeding it up to that point. You may even need to add a box, because you won't be able to get queens until early April. If they're that strong now, my recommendation is keep feeding, and probably in late February, early March, add a third box to them to keep them from swarming.
Is there any logic to him sharing if he had another hive that was weaker to take some of those kind of equalize? Too late? I mean, I don't think it's really too late. There's never really too.
I probably wouldn't do that until they have some brood. So it sounds like you mentioned they don't have any brood yet. So I would leave them be, and then starting in late February, early March, you can absolutely pull some of the inevitable large amount of brood they'll have at that point and give it to weaker hives to kind of slow their roll a little bit to keep them from swarming. That's a great idea.
Well, and we are getting so close. Bees are fixing to start. She's fixing to start repopulating quickly.
Right.
Hard to put our head around. All right, Phil, I have 4 colonies. On warm days, my bees are foraging and bringing in pollen with the exception of 1. Would this be an indication of a queenless colony?
Not necessarily. I would say it's an indication of probably a weaker colony. My suspicion would be it's just not as strong of a colony. Queenless colonies won't bring in as much pollen. It's possible that's what's going on, but 9 times out of 10, I just see that it's usually a weaker colony more often than not.
All right, we're making our way down the list. You got a lot of there's a lot of open questions.
There's a lot of questions. Yeah.
There it is. James is just typing away over there.
Go James.
He can. Go James. He'd rather do that anyway. Okay, Phil. Did I do that? I did. I had from Barbara. I had 3 boxes of honey, and the bees were very active all summer. In August, they left, and the boxes were in the sun. And I'm sorry, y'all. And the box were in sun and shade. I'm sorry, I didn't read that the way she typed it. Can you see that question? In August, they left, and the boxes were in the sun and shade.
I'll go ahead and read another one, Sherry, and I'll go back and look at that one.
Well, we'll answer that. Sorry, Barbara.
Sure.
Probably user error here. All right, Blake, I've seen a lot of different products here at the Expo. Oh, we have an Expo viewer. What do you think about the things you screw onto boxes that helps you to crack the box? We talked about this. Also, what about what about handles? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't, but I can make a guess. I'm guessing it's some sort of device you kind of screw in to give your
That's
to
the
ventilate.
hand. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, this isn't a pot. I get myself in trouble because I've got a lot of friends that sell stuff and we sell stuff and
I know.
but 95% of what is sold at places like this is just fun. You know, you don't
Right.
actually need it to be successful in beekeeping, but it's our hobby, right? And so
Right.
it's fun, it's cool, it's what we do, and it's fun to try new stuff. So yeah, like the handles are super helpful. I mean, I find it easier to have a handle like that if I'm lifting up boxes than just rely on the current handholds. So if lifting boxes is a challenge for you, those handles can be really helpful. You know, creating ventilation, I don't think that product's a good product. You can also just do it with a popsicle stick, but it's a cool product. And so it's part of the joy of beekeeping is trying some of these gadgets and gizmos. And if they make your journey easier or more fun, go for it. If you're just trying to keep it at a budget and keep bees alive, you know, queens, nutrition, and mites. You know, queens, feed, and mites is what you got to focus on.
Did
But
everybody
yeah,
do that?
those are cool products, though. I mean, nothing at all wrong
really
with those products. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, we've all, you know, if it strikes you, get it. You
I
can
mean, I'm
try it.
buying all sorts of junk here. So I mean, I'm doing it too. It's part of the
We're
fun
trying to
of
figure
it.
out how we're going to get it back on the plane for
Right.
sure.
Exactly.
Oh, let's see here. This one started blank. Let me go down a little bit further. Hold on.
Somebody
Y'all,
mentioned though, I was reading in the comments though, someone was talking about if you're trying to clean up frames using a pressure washer. I highly recommend that. If you are trying to preserve frames that have had wax moth damage and you do want to clean them up, a pressure washer is a godsend for cleaning off that plastic foundation because it really pops the cocoons out of those cells. So yeah, if you are cleaning up frames, a pressure washer is almost a must to really get them cleaned up quickly. So thank you for that suggestion. Great idea.
That is a good suggestion. Nancy says, and I like this, and I'm curious what your answer is going to be. Is there any way to know if bees are bringing in nectar? We can see pollen, but do we know if they're bringing in nectar?
You know, the only way I know that is when I'm driving on the highway and I hit one of them, and you see it on the windshield. But it's tough to know if you're just looking at the entrance of a hive. Not really. You really can't tell if they're coming back with nectar versus an empty load versus, you know, pollen. You can see it. So the way to tell if they're bringing nectar is to look at the hive, you know, and if you're seeing them whitening up the comb or a bunch of cells with that shimmering uncapped nectar, that's really the best way to tell. But yeah, I'm not aware of any great method to just look at the outside and tell if they're bringing in nectar. Once you get to know the flowers in your area, you can start to recognize, oh, that blooming flower is a nectar producer.
And you see bees on it.
Yeah.
I will tell you that our mentor had the funniest, it may be true. He told us early on that bees full of nectar, of course, we know they store nectar in their honey stomach, right? That when they fly in heavy. And that you can almost see them flying heavy. And I don't know if that really, you know.
And you know,
makes sense.
Fly out heavy.
That's right.
Robin.
That's true.
Yeah. So I don't know, y'all. That was just something he was probably just humoring us
Also
with the same question. Yeah,
right,
that's true. All right. Yeah, we'll pass that one. Could you simply add a box to your 2 boxes of bees to prevent them from swarming?
Yes, you bet. That really helps. And yeah, so when we talked earlier about if you got 2 boxes already full of bees, you can add a box to prevent swarming. I'm going to make a quick suggestion though. Add that 3rd box to the very bottom. If it's not critical, adding it to the top is better than nothing. If you have the strength and the determination to lift up those 2 current boxes, putting an empty box at the very bottom is almost a complete guarantee of preventing swarming. If you've got dead space below the bottom brood box, it virtually 100% eliminates swarming. On the very top, it dramatically reduces it as well. But for some reason, the extra space at the bottom does a way better job at preventing swarming.
The last, we are about out of time.
Good time for.
Where is it? Is it? Do we have one?
Well, there's a 9-year-old that has a question. Vivian?
Okay.
And Robert asked in the chat if there's any benefit to adding some Propola boxes to a hive that already has regular boxes. I thought that was a really good question. And the answer is yes. So I actually asked the inventor of that today. So we kind of did a live Q&A with the inventor of the Propola box here at the Expo today. And that was one of the questions I asked is, hey, if all my other boxes are not the Propola boxes, and I just add one in, does that help? And the answer was the research shows that yes, one significantly helps, but both is way better. So I think, one is like a 50%, 60%, throwing numbers out there, but one is a significant benefit. Two is even better. But yeah, I mean, it's going to take, you don't want to just throw away good boxes. So most people switch over a number of years to the Propolis style. But yeah, it provides significant benefit even if you just have one of them.
Why don't we call this next one your last one, Blake, since we're right on
let's do it. Yeah,
How
and
many
we'll
frames-
answer any other questions
Oh, sure.
offline.
We'll do it after. This is a great question. How many frames of bees should I have in the month of January? What should we, and she expounded to say she's a double deep.
Sure. Yeah, so there's really not a should. I mean, there's danger zone and then there's phenomenal. So if a hive has less than 3 frames of bees, probably isn't going to make it through the winter, I'm concerned. Anything above that is great. I would say on average, what I feel comfortable with in January is, if they are 7 to 10 frames of bees, I'm feeling really good, about that hive. It's going to be a robust hive. It's going to come out of the winter great. Good chance you can make a split and make a honey crop. If they're over 10, it's phenomenal. If they're under 7, 7 to 3 frames, they'll probably pull through, but probably won't be able to make a split. So great question. Yeah. Awesome. Well, if you didn't get your question answered, hang out for a minute. And once we go offline, we'll keep answering those in the Q&A box. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us. As always, you'll get a recording emailed out to all of you. Thank you, Sherry and James. It'll probably be Monday or so before we get that to you because we're at the conference this weekend. But we will see you in February. February is a huge bee month. We have a ton of topics to talk about. And I can't wait to see you there in about a month. So happy January, everyone, and we'll see you soon.